Thank you, Ceann Comhairle. Fairy tales, Ceann Comhairle. You know, that's what comes to mind when you think of and hear the government excuses and government explanations in relation to the overrun of the huge overrun on the National Children's Hospital. You couldn't actually make it up, I think. And in fact, the last time I spoke on this issue here, I said that anybody with a whit of common sense wouldn't believe what the government were saying. And that's even more true today than it was then. At that stage, we were laughably told that Minister Harris didn't tell Minister O'Donoghue about the overrun as he hadn't completed his own investigation. Now we're told that the Chief Procurement Officer, who's a member of Minister Donoghue's department, wasn't acting in that role on the hospital board, would you believe? However, we're told he was appointed by the Minister for Health in a personal capacity, would you believe? And that's why he wasn't required to report to Minister Donoghue. Well, as I said, Ceann Comhairle, fairy tales and more fairy tales and more excuses. It even went further. At the Public Accounts Committee, the Public Accounts Committee sought the procurement officer to appear before it. He didn't. And why didn't he? Well, the General Secretary said that he didn't pick him on his team. The General Secretary thought that another individual from that section would be more appropriate than the procurement officer. And if you believe that, you'd believe anything. The PwC report, another fairy tale. I heard Deputy O'Brien tell us that this report, supposed to cost 450,000, is now going to cost 600,000. And of course, the big fairy tale of all is the actual cost of the National Children's Hospital as we know now. Started at what was then, I suppose, a reasonable figure enough, 650 million. Well, now everybody in this House knows that the cost of that hospital, if it continues, is going to be absolutely in excess of €2 billion. Much more likely to be €2.5 billion. And that is an absolute scandal. And we know now, of course, that all this cover-up by the government, effectively what was going on, the government was ensuring that they weren't officially informed of the position because they were preparing for a general election, because they were afraid Fianna Fáil were going to pull out of the confidence and supply agreement, so they wanted a good budget. And basically, that's what was going on. So we now find ourselves in a situation where a number of capital projects, a considerable number of capital projects around the country are going to be suspended or delayed or deferred as a result of this huge overrun. Some of those projects affecting my own constituency would include the unit at University Hospital Limerick, which covers the north of County Tipperary. The 40-bed modular unit at South Tipperary General Hospital in Clonmel, even though it will be completed and constructed later this year, is likely not to open, and certainly not to open fully. And as I refer to that, Minister, I would ask that we finally get confirmation of what funding has been made available or is being made available to South Tipperary General Hospital to open that unit. We've raised it here, a number of us, as a topical issue. We haven't got figures. We've raised it as PQs. We haven't got figures. I've written to the Minister. We haven't got figures. It's time now that we got the figures. How much is provided for equipping and staffing the 40-bed modular unit at South Tipperary General Hospital? There's a question of a 100-bed unit for the elderly at Cashel. Is that going to be delayed? And of course, there is the absolutely shocking situation for mental health services in Tipperary, where the closure of the 50-bed inpatient psychiatric unit at St Michael's unit in Clonmel closed back in 2012. We now have a situation where there is no inpatient service in the county, and the unit in Kilkenny, where South Tipperary patients have to go, has been the subject of a court case by HICWA recently, and it's absolutely shocking. That unit in Clonmel needs to be opened, and we can have absolutely no deferral, no suspension and no delay of those projects. There's no question in my mind that the site at St James's was never the right site, and I believe now that the motion here is a reasonable motion, that within a reasonable time span proper investigation should take place, that the work and that a new site, a greenfield site, a site which would allow cost savings should be investigated, and the National Children's Hospital should be built there.
Thank you.